Welcome everyone. Today I have Georgia back, our nutritionist, our in-house nutritionist for Body Fabulous and for the Ultimate Pregnant Core program. And today we're going to be talking gut health. And we all pretty much know that when your tummy's unhappy, this can affect you in many ways, like physically and mentally. And Georgia's going to shed some light on, gut health, because I think currently at the moment it might seem like a little bit of a fad or a trend, but it is actually something that is really, really important during pregnancy, postpartum, and for life. So, Georgia, can you tell us what are some of the symptoms of poor gut health?
Yeah, so gut health is a huge topic, obviously. But we're just going to go through a bit of the overview at the moment, because as you said, gut health is really, and from a naturopathic point of view, it's the basis of your health, regardless of where you're at in your life stage and also your health status, So, but when you're talking about symptoms of gut health, there are the gastrointestinal symptoms, which are the ones that we would all commonly associate with. If we have them, we sort of think something may not be right with my gut. But then there's also systemic ones. And by those, we're talking about symptoms where poor gut health in other parts of the body, or poor gut health causes symptoms in the other parts of the body, or imbalances in other parts of the body or certain disease states cause symptoms that adversely cause your gastrointestinal symptoms, I should say, or it can be a combination of both. So the net result of this, regardless of what particular combination you've got going on, is a broad range of symptoms that can be associated with poor gut health. So your gastrointestinal type symptoms are things like bloating, which can be present most of the time for some people during the day or night, or it can occur after eating meals in general, or specific types of foods can bring it on. Excessive gas, changes, alterations, or irregularity with regards to bowel movements, so like things like diarrhea and constipation, or presence of pain with bowel movements, or where there's blood or mucus in the stool. Symptoms associated with reduced absorption of certain nutrients such as B12 and iron and energy, for example. Food allergies and sensitivities, dyspepsia, and then there's your conditions like IBD, IBS, celiac disease, and Crohn's disease. So then if you delve a little bit further into your more systemic kind of conditions or symptoms, just to clarify, in some of these cases that I'm going to mention, poor gut health is often the cause of these issues, but also it can be that it's not the primary cause, but it can make things worse, or it can contribute to it in some way. So just to be clear about that, I'm not saying that in all the ones I'm about to list, gut health is the only thing to consider, but generally it's something that is worth looking at if you have one of these conditions, to see how much it might be contributing to your symptoms. So impaired immunity, whether you're getting colds and flus more often, or when you do get them, they're quite severe and they last for a long time and it takes a long time to shake them off. Autoimmune conditions are to do with gut health, inflammatory skin conditions, allergies in general, brain fog, or further along that sort of spectrum, neurological disorders that can happen. Reduced capacity for physical activity, so you just feel like, as you would probably see a lot. And also certain female reproductive issues can have a gut angle to them, like PCOS, endometriosis, reduced ovarian quality, lack of ovulation or regular ovulation, and infertility. So with those ones, it can tend to be more where there's poor gut function, then creating an environment where there's oxidative stress and inflammation, which then can contribute to those types of conditions. So I guess, you could go on and on about the symptoms, but they're sort of the broad ones, I guess, the first ones that would come to mind when you're talking about gut health, really.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, I'm all about the core, because I think everything in your body comes back to your core, which is your active center, physically, which, includes your digestive system as well. And because I believe it's linked to everything. So if your core isn't functioning well from your pelvic floor to the muscles in there, it affects so many other parts of the body. And the same goes with your digestive tract, doesn't it? If your gut isn't functioning well, there's a myriad of things that get out of whack. This whole center of our body is just is so important. So what other like often people immediately think of gut health as in nutrition and food. but your gut health can be affected by other factors, that are not necessarily nutritional. What sort of things?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Obviously, food can be a big factor with gut, and it would have to be considered with anyone who is having gut symptoms. But other factors are things like physical stress, physical activity levels, temperature conditions when you are exercising. For example, if you exercise, having quite a high intensity session in really hot conditions, that can affect your gut health. Psychological stress, illness, hormonal changes, including generally over a menstrual cycle, and also during pregnancy and menopause. Women can often see changes with their gut health then. Medications like the oral contraceptive pill or antibiotics or non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, age, alcohol, smoking, drug use, dehydration, and also environmental toxins like air pollution, pesticides, radiation, insecticides, and artificial sweeteners and heavy metals. So you can see, looking at all of that, and that's not even taking into account all the different food complications or aspects that can contribute to it. You can understand why there's such a widespread experience in the population of various levels of gut dysfunction or symptoms, because if you take that sort of list, most people would be exposed to one or multiple ones of those. So, and that's not taking into account someone's individual genetic predisposition to certain imbalances or conditions in relation to the gut.
So it's really interesting. So it's pretty much everyone needs to, because of all a variety of factors, needs to focus on some form of gut health. But I guess, looking at it from this perspective of not necessarily thinking, okay, I can't eat that food, it might trigger my gut health. Is it a better approach thinking, okay, I'm going to eat more foods that nourish my gut? How do you kind of, I guess, without, for the general population, without having a blood test or doing testing on what, triggers that gut health or having pre-existing conditions, can you just naturally improve your gut by eating more nourishing foods?
Yeah, you can. But I think when you're looking at addressing poor gut health and food sensitivities, obviously, as we said, a lot of different factors can be contributing to these. And obviously, these factors are going to vary between individuals in terms of the number of the factors and how much particular ones might be contributing compared to others. And also your genetic tendencies. And also and the combination of those that are bringing about your symptoms. So, it's important to get to the bottom of what's causing your food sensitivities and your poor gut health, really to be able to address it properly and identify other potential consequences of it. For example, not absorbing enough iron, which then can be bringing on a whole bunch of other health issues and symptoms, for example. And it's also, you need to, when you're talking about food sensitivities, you need to clarify whether they're more functional related. And by that I mean where poor gut health, for example, imbalance of bacteria in your large bowel, is causing a reactivity to a particular food more so than the food itself for some people, say for example gluten. If it's an intolerance, which is a non-immune response and it tends to be dose related, like lactose intolerance, for example, or whether it's an allergy and that's an immune mediated response, and they're all quite different in terms of how you would address them. So, but in terms of, broadly speaking, as you mentioned, so there's elimination options. And this is basically where particular foods or food components are removed from the diet for a certain period of time to see if there's an improvement in any of the symptoms that people feel like might be associated with them. And this can be, I guess the plus side of this, it's pretty low cost. It's relatively easy depending on how much you're eliminating, and some people can get really clear and really quick improvements in their symptoms by eliminating certain foods. Like they might say, and I'm not demonizing gluten, it's just because it's really well known, people understand it. They take gluten out and then they go, okay, great, improvement in symptoms. But then the downside of this approach, particularly I guess if people are doing it on their own or without having, I guess, enough information about how to do it properly, is it can lead to nutrient imbalances and deficiencies if you're cutting out a certain food group. It can lead to cutting out foods unnecessarily. Say, for example, using gluten. You might think, okay, gluten doesn't work for me. You cut out all gluten foods, but it may not be gluten. It might be FODMAPs, because FODMAPs and gluten coexist in a lot of the same foods. So it can lead to wholesale of cutting out certain food groups when it may not have been needed in the first place. Another downside is really cutting out foods for longer time periods than is necessary, because the normal approach or the general approach is that food should be introduced slowly and then assessed and see how people are responding to that. And, you can go back and forth. And as you said, not adding in foods that nourish your gastrointestinal tract without worsening symptoms, because some people can be afraid to add things in, because if you're getting gut symptoms for a really long time, and obviously that can be really debilitating, people can tend to eat less and less food. So you need to be looking at doing it properly if you're going to do it. And also, I guess the other downside is it doesn't necessarily uncover what the underlying causes are beyond the food component that might be contributing to it. So like dysbiosis, which is your imbalance of your gut, or the lining of your intestines contributing, that sort of thing. So I guess that's the elimination side, but then there's testing as well, and that has ups and downs as well. So
yeah, so I guess it's really important, I guess, for anyone who is having probably more severe symptoms or concerns, is definitely to see an expert like yourself, Georgia. But then,
well, it can just save you a lot of time. I mean,
yeah,
some people they might be able to definitely look at their own diet and go, yep, okay, I know for sure. So like, mum doesn't respond well to XYZ, so I'm going to cut that out and just see how I go, type of thing. But for other people, they might have quite a complicated combination of, like the stuff we talked about before, like they might have functional things going on in their gut which are causing symptoms, but they also might have intolerances or allergies and that type of thing. So it's really just about making sure you're addressing it in the most efficient way and appropriate way without wasting your time and money on tests that may not be appropriate for you, but also you want to feel good, and you don't want to be unnecessarily by not doing it the right way, I guess. It's
like anything. I mean, it's so funny. I have a lot of ladies come to me who, they're pregnant and they suddenly want to exercise, and they're trying to be DIYing their exercise program by Googling this and heard from a friend to do this, and I might try this. And then they're kind of like, well, it's kind of just not working for me, and I'm now just completely overwhelmed what I should and shouldn't be doing. So I guess it really comes back to that when you talk about nutrition and gut health as well. But on that note, to ensure you have, a healthy gut, or just feeling better within your gut, what are some of the easiest, most accessible foods that can help nourish the gut in general?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't going to sound terribly exciting. I don't have any particular fancy diet to be talking about or selling, but it's really coming back to basics, like your whole food based diet, your fruits. There's a reason that is recommended, your fruits and vegetables and whole grains that you can tolerate, good fats, your complete protein as your basis, and then particular dietary components to focus on is eating enough fiber. If there's evidence for one particular type of food group in terms of gut health, it's definitely fiber, which comes from the more of a whole food based diet that you're eating, the more of these that you'll get, because it has a myriad of benefits for your gut. Probiotic type foods, and again, this will be dependent for the individual person. So like some people, if they're histamine intolerant, may not be able to handle sauerkraut, for example, or certain type of things like that. But generally speaking, fermented type vegetables like sauerkraut and kimchi, miso, kombucha, kefir if you like it, yogurt, that type of thing. Whole grains that you like, that you can tolerate and like the taste of, like oats and brown rice and quinoa and buckwheat. Your whole protein sources we've spoken about a fair bit, whether it's meat or vegetarian. And if you have having vegetarian sources, having a combination of different types of vegetarians so you can get your complete complete protein. And things like bone broths, whether you want to make your own or you can get a good quality powdered version, but also minimizing intake of foods that don't help your gut, really. So things like
the processed foods, I guess.
Processed foods, sweeteners, soft drinks, alcohol, and substances that don't work for you individually. So for some people, gluten, dairy and legumes are no-go. So I guess, as we talk about a lot, you and I, it's about, okay, this is the general recommendation of whole foods, that type of thing, but then you will tweak it based on what works for you individually and really tune into that. Yeah.
It's interesting because I guess, some people think, oh, this whole gut health thing is just a fad. Whereas I guess from my perspective, it's like, well, it's not really a fad. It's just, society's developed into producing more processed foods. We used to eat more whole foods, so we probably didn't have as many gut health issues. So it's just a symptom of what's happened in general.
Yeah, and I don't think you can call something a fad when it was way back, and I couldn't tell you the year it was, but Hippocrates, when he's, you know, saying that's really well known, all diseases begin in the gut, to now, and how much research is happening with gut health, and it's linked to so many conditions.
Oh, so many mental health, everything.
And that's it. And we're only just not even scratching the surface of how it's all linked. And so I just don't see how anyone can say it's a fad, because, and even just from a physiological point of view, even without any sort of nutrition background and knowledge at all, everyone knows that you eat food, your body absorbs the food, and then your body uses that as building blocks to function. You know, so if that's not working well, of course it's going to affect how your whole body functions in one way or another. It's just that how it affects your particular function might differ to someone else's, you know, depending on your own makeup and what you're eating and what you're not eating and your lifestyle and all those types of factors.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, you eat food, and I know even for myself, like, you eat food and then, you know, 3 hours later, you're like, you can completely change your mood. You might be on a high immediately after something, you know, if it's been sugary or whatever, but then you go into a slump and you realize how much it affects you physically and mentally. So if someone generally is trying to clean up their gut health and eat more whole foods, and just does the reaction on feeling better, you know, what does it normally take for people? Do they normally find a shift in a week or a month, or just making some simple changes?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what their baseline is, so to speak, as far as how what their diet is like currently in terms of substances that are helping their gut versus not so much, and also how quickly they're making changes. You know, I'm a believer in, like, if you're someone that's, for example, you know, has a fairly processed diet, you know, you'd be wanting to make gradual changes. So then you might notice things a little bit slower, or you might even notice things quicker, for example, because you're making changes that will have a pretty significant effect in most people. Like if you're having a lot of soft drink and you cut that out, or you're having, you know, a lot of processed foods and you transition to more whole foods type of thing, you'll probably notice effects pretty quickly compared to someone that might eat a mainly whole foods diet but has particular symptoms and need to tweak things, you know. So it's really variable, because everyone is so different, like we've been talking about, with what brings about people's particular symptoms or conditions and how long it's been there for. But definitely, whoever you are, if you're addressing it in the right way, you will see improvements over a period of time. It just depends on how long it is for you, you know. So definitely I would say stick with it or look at getting some further assessments or tweaking things a bit if it hasn't worked for you, you know, in a certain time frame. So
yeah, and speaking to, I mean, Georgia's done an amazing job in the Ultimate Pregnant Core program, and she has designed all our meal plans and recipes and shopping lists. And I know for a lot of the ladies who are going through the program are now in that postpartum stage, and it's really interesting because, like what I said, you know, coming back to your core and nourishing the core and healing that core post-birth, and not necessarily from a gut health point of view, but just from almost a tissue repair point of view. They're all going back to, you know, the foods that you mentioned, you know, even today, you know, so your bone broths, your whole foods, just supporting. And it's really interesting. They're all saying, wow, I can really feel a difference, particularly the ones that didn't do this previous pregnancy, and this is the second pregnancy. So it's pretty powerful what you can do with very, very simple foods and
absolutely. And like, it doesn't have to be complicated. It just, you know, looking at, you know, we've spoken about this in previous talks, looking at for what you would eat over a week or a day or a week or a month, and really starting to tune into, okay, which way of eating is not really working for you. Like, when after eating do you just feel really tired, or just, you know, you're just, or snappy, or your gut doesn't work, or whatever it might be, however it might present for you. And what are ways to kind of switch that up a bit without feeling like you're taking all the joy out of your life. You know,
yeah, completely. So, it doesn't have to be boring.
And, you know, like, even depending on where you're at, like, and obviously, especially if you're a new mum, you've got a lot going on. So even if just one change a week, or one change a fortnight, or one change a month, if that's what you can manage, do that. Like, but because then it's easier to make it a bit more of a sustainable change. So like, okay, you may not drink enough water, so that's maybe contributing to constipation, for example. So okay, I'm going to look at drinking, you know, more water over the case of the next 2 weeks. I'm going to have a water bottle wherever I go, and I'm going to try and go through, say, 2 or 3 of those, for example. It might be just something simple like that. Or someone may not eat breakfast, and they really notice by the time mid-morning their brain is just not functioning, and their energy levels are low, and their mood is all over the shop. So they're okay, well, I'm not that hungry in the morning, but I might just gradually move back half an hour throughout the morning over the next month, like eating a little bit earlier, for example, or having something lighter like a smoothie or fruit, or, you know, stewed fruit at this time of year, that type of stuff, you know. So it's, and just making that your project for the month. So it's not about making, okay, I'm going to go live on a mountain and I'm not going to have anything unprocessed for the rest of my life, and this is it, you know.
Yeah, and it is, and it just it comes back to that whole
diet,
that, you know, that diet hamster wheel cycle where everyone throws everything out with the bathwater, and I'm going to try and do this. And it's the same with exercise. I mean, that's what I say to the ladies, you know, just start with 5 minutes a day.
Yeah.
5 minutes on this day every time, and oh wow, I've been going for 5 minutes, I think I can go for another 5 minutes. Or I might, you know, I'm feeling really good. Or even if you get interrupted, it doesn't matter. You've done 10 minutes, and that's awesome. And how do you feel after that? How are your energy levels after that? How's your sleep after that? You know,
how do you recover after that, after doing that exercise for a while? That sort of thing. So yeah, it just, if there's one thing that people would take away from this, it's about, okay, looking at where you're at with your gut health, seeing where you feel like, okay, things might be out of balance, and looking at where particular tweaks or changes you can put in place over the course of the next few weeks or months, depending on the severity and number of symptoms you've got that are doable. If you're someone that likes a list, write a list and put it on a calendar, put it on your fridge. Like, this month I'm going to drink more water, and next month I'm going to do this, and next month I'm going to do that. You can do it that way. Or as you said, if you feel like there's a lot more going on, you know, get some assessments done so you can do it in the right way, you know. So it just depends on the person, really, and where they're at.
And that's awesome, Georgia. So we're, you know, speaking of assessments, and if people do need a bit of extra help, Georgia is, you know, a certified nutritionist and naturopath. So where can everyone find you?
So they can just go to my website, georgiamarrion.com, and you can make an inquiry through that if you're wanting some more information, and we can book appointments and go from there. All my appointments are online to make it easier for all the mums and women out there. So we just use a forum similar to this. So, but if you've got any questions, just email me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Georgia.
No problem. It's nice to be here.
Okay.